Wordless 2. Adulation. Flattery, admiration. The rock star thrived on the adulation of his groupies and yes men. Adulterate. Make impure by adding inferior or tainted substances. It is a crime to adulterate foods without informing the buyer. When consumers learned that Beech-Nut had adulterated their apple juice by mixing it with water, they protested vigorously. Advent. Arrival. Most Americans were unaware of the advent of the nuclear age until the news of Hiroshima reached them. Adventitious. Accidental, casual. He found this adventitious meeting with his friend extremely fortunate. Adversary. Opponent. The young wrestler struggled to defeat his adversary. Adverse. Unfavorable, hostile. The recession had a highly adverse effect on father's investment portfolio. He lost so much money that he could no longer afford the butler and the upstairs maid. Adversity. Poverty, misfortune. We must learn to meet adversity gracefully. Advocacy. Support, active pleading on something's behalf. No threats could dissuade Bishop Desmond Tutu from his advocacy of the human rights of black South Africans. Advocate. Urge, plead for. The abolitionists advocated freedom for the slaves. Eyrie. Nest of the large bird of prey, eagle, hawk. The mother eagle swooped down on the unwitting rabbit and bore it off to her eyrie high in the Rocky Mountains. Aesthetic. Artistic, dealing with or capable of appreciation of the beautiful. The beauty of Tiffany's stained glass appealed to Esther's aesthetic sense. Affable. Easily approachable, warmly friendly. Accustomed to cold, aloof supervisors, Nicholas was amazed at how affable his new employer was. Affected. Artificial, pretended, assumed in order to impress. His affected mannerisms, his Harvard accent, his air of boredom, his use of obscure foreign words bugged us. He acted as if he thought he was too good for his old high school friends. Affidavit. Written statement made under oath. The court refused to accept his statement unless he presented it in the form of an affidavit. Affiliation. Joining, associating with. His affiliation with the political party was of short duration, for he soon disagreed with his colleagues. Affinity. Kinship. She felt an affinity with all who suffered, their pains were her pains. Affirmation. Positive assertion, confirmation, solemn pledge by one who refuses to take an oath. Despite Tom's affirmations of innocence, Aunt Polly still suspected he had eaten the pie. Affix. Fasten, attach, add on. First the registrar had to affix her signature to the license, then she had to affix her official seal. Affliction. State of distress, cause of suffering. Even in the midst of her affliction, Elizabeth tried to keep up the spirits of those around her. Affluence. Abundance, wealth. Foreigners are amazed by the affluence and luxury of the American way of life. Affront. Insult, offense, intentional act of disrespect. When Mrs. Prouty was not seated beside the Archdeacon at the head table, she took it as a personal affront and refused to speak to her hosts for a week. Aftermath. Consequences, outcome, upshot. People around the world wondered what the aftermath of China's violent suppression of the student protests would be. Agenda. Items of business at a meeting. We had so much difficulty agreeing upon an agenda that there was very little time for the meeting. Agent. Means or instrument, personal representative, person acting in an official capacity. I will be the agent of America's destruction, proclaimed the beady-eyed villain, whose agent had gotten him the role. With his face, he could never have played the part of the hero, a heroic FBI agent. Agglomeration. Collection, heap. It took weeks to assort the agglomeration of miscellaneous items she had collected on her trip. Aggrandize. Increase or intensify. The history of the past quarter century illustrates how a president may aggrandize his power to act aggressively in international affairs without considering the wishes of Congress. Aggregate. Gather, accumulate. Before the Wall Street scandals, dealers in so-called junk bonds managed to aggregate great wealth in short periods of time. Aggressor. Attacker. Before you punish both boys for fighting, see whether you can determine which one was the aggressor. Aghast. Horrified. He was aghast at the nerve of the speaker who had insulted his host. Agility. Nimbleness. The agility of the acrobat amazed and thrilled the audience. Agitate. Stir up, disturb. Her fiery remarks agitated the already angry mob. Agnostic. One who is skeptical of the existence or knowability of a God or any ultimate reality. Agnostics say we can neither prove nor disprove the existence of God, we simply just can't know. Agrarian. Pertaining to land or its cultivation. The country is gradually losing its agrarian occupation and turning more and more to an industrial point of view. Alacrity. Cheerful promptness. Phil and Dave were raring to get off to the mountains. They packed up their ski gear and climbed into the van with alacrity. Alchemy. Medieval chemistry. The changing of baser metals into gold was the goal of the students of alchemy. Alcove. Nook, small, recessed section of a room. Though their apartment lacked a full-scale dining room, an alcove adjacent to the living room made an adequate breakfast nook for the young couple. Alias. An assumed name. John Smith's alias was Bob Jones. Alienate. Make hostile, separate. Her attempts to alienate the two friends failed because they had complete faith in each other. Alimentary. Supplying nourishment. The alimentary canal in our bodies is so named because digestion of foods occurs there. When asked for the name of the digestive tract, Sherlock Holmes replied, "Alimentary, my dear Watson." Alimony. Payment by a husband to his divorced wife, or vice versa. Mrs. Jones was awarded $1 monthly alimony by the court when she was divorced from her husband. Allay. Calm, pacify. The crew tried to allay the fears of the passengers by announcing that the fire had been controlled. Allege. State without proof. Although it is alleged that she has worked for the enemy, she denies the allegation and, legally, we can take no action against her without proof. Allegiance. Loyalty. Not even a term in prison could shake Lech Walensa's allegiance to Solidarity, the Polish trade union he had helped to found. Allegory. Story in which characters are used as symbols, fable. Pilgrim's Progress is an allegory of the temptations and victories of man's soul. Alleviate. Relieve. This should alleviate the pain. If it does not, we shall have to use stronger drugs. Alliteration. Repetition of beginning sound in poetry. The furrow followed free is an example of alliteration. Allocate. Assign. Even though the Red Cross had allocated a large sum for the relief of the sufferers of the disaster, many people perished. Alloy. A mixture as of metals. Alloys of gold are used more frequently than a pure metal. Alloy. Mix. Make less pure, lessen or moderate. Our delight at the Yankees' victory was alloyed by our concern for Dwight Gooden, who injured his pitching arm in the game. Allude. Refer indirectly. Try not to mention divorce in Jack's presence because he will think you are alluding to his marital problems with Jill. Allure. Entice, attract. Allured by the song of the sirens, the helmsman steered the ship toward the reef. Allusion. Indirect reference. When Amanda said to the ticket scalper, $100. What do you want? A pound of flesh. She was making an allusion to Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. Aloft. Upward. The sailor climbed aloft into the rigging. To get into a loft bed, you have to climb aloft. Aloof. Apart, reserved. Shy by nature, she remained aloof while all the rest conversed. Altercation. Noisy quarrel, heated dispute. In that hot-tempered household, no meal ever came to a peaceful conclusion. The inevitable altercation might even end in blows. Altruistic. Unselfishly generous, concerned for others. In providing tutorial assistance and college scholarships for hundreds of economically disadvantaged youths, Eugene Link performed a truly altruistic deed. Amalgamate. Combine, unite in one body. The unions will attempt to amalgamate their groups into one national body. Amass. Collect. The miser's aim is to amass and hoard as much gold as possible. Ambidextrous. Capable of using either hand with equal ease. A switch hitter in baseball should be naturally ambidextrous. Ambience. Environment, atmosphere. She went to the restaurant not for the food but for the ambience. Ambiguous. Unclear or doubtful in meaning. His ambiguous instructions misled us, we did not know which road to take. Ambivalence. The state of having contradictory or conflicting emotional attitudes. Torn between loving her parents one minute and hating them the next, she was confused by the ambivalence of her feelings. amble. Moving at an easy pace. When she first mounted the horse, she was afraid to urge the animal to go faster than a gentle amble. Ambulatory. Able to walk, not bedridden. Juan was a highly ambulatory patient. Not only did he refuse to be confined to bed, but he insisted on riding his skateboard up and down the halls. Ameliorate. Improve. Many social workers have attempted to ameliorate the conditions of people living in the slums. Amenable. Readily managed, willing to be led. He was amenable to any suggestions that came from those he looked up to. He resented advice from his inferiors. Amend. Correct, change, generally for the better. Hoping to amend his condition, he left Vietnam for the United States.